Hi, this is Karen Rowland, founder of Hush Providence. Welcome to my new weekly Wellbeing podcast, Real People, Real Conversations, Real Life. We'll be talking about all things relating to the human experience. What makes up a life? What creates joy and happiness? What makes humans the same or different? How do we care for ourselves and each other? We'll even try to answer the 5 W's of well-being: who, what, when, where, and why, and how this all fits together. A little ambitious? Maybe, but join us as we connect with local topic experts, peers, mentors, and healers. Welcome to Hush Providence, a well-being podcast. I'm excited to introduce Stephanie Robb to today's episode. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
So you are the founder of Journey Illuminated, and you're a mindful rewilding outdoor consultant. Can you define rewilding for us?
Absolutely. A lot of people are familiar with the term in terms of nature and conservation. Um, so the way that we look at it through the idea of mindfulness and applying to humans is coming back to our own nature of being human within the natural world. It's not necessarily asking us to go back to how we were when we lived in caves, um, but it does give us, so when we rewild, we get back in touch with the skills that we probably did use then, like paying attention to the weather and the stars and making our own fire and understanding the relationship between other animals so that we can have food, so that we can be safe, um, foraging, and our relationship with plants, and even insects. So it's a rewilding, meaning come back to the self and the human.
Love it. For education, you went to Salve Regina, you have a Master of Arts, Holistic Leadership Studies. You went to Boston University, studied art history. And I'm interested in learning more about your experience at Kripalu, if you could share.
Yes, it was one of the best experiences I've had. I don't remember exactly how I found it. I'm pretty sure I was looking for a graduate program studying mindfulness and nature. And I stumbled across it. They had a brand new School of Mindful Outdoor Leadership that started in 2018. And I applied for scholarship and got it and went. I'd heard about Kripalu, but didn't really know much about it. And then the first sign upon entering is breathe. You have arrived. And it feels so nice to get off the road and see that sign, and then go in and be surrounded by calm people who are looking forward to something that they don't know what it is. And so we gathered in a circle around a makeshift fire inside the Kripalu building, and we had introductions by our teachers, and then Mark Rule, one of our teachers, handed out little sprigs of cedar. So we each held the cedar twig in our, or leaf, I don't really know what to call it, in our hands. And he invited us all to really look at that piece of cedar. We examined both sides, twisted it around, and then he asked us to touch and smell. And then the best part was when he asked us to really kind of crunch it up. And after we'd sort of found how beautiful it was sort of, ooh, to crunch it up. But when we opened our hand, the essential oils had been released. And so then we could really smell the life of the cedar. And so that was our introduction to the mindful outdoor leadership training that we received outside. Mostly we were outside. It was the introduction almost exclusively that was inside.
So it's all about noticing.
Yeah, noticing, sort of inviting all the senses to take part in every experience.
I'm reading a book right now, actually, Life in the Five Senses by Gretchen Rubin. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It sort of just came
No.
out, but she talks about a happier, more mindful life. And it's really kind of what you're talking about right now, which is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's been my experience, a happier, more mindful life after doing this training.
So you have a quote on your website: each star is a mirror reflecting the truth inside you. Maybe you could elaborate on that concept and also share your journey, illuminated history, and vision.
Mm. Well, it doesn't always seem like the people that we're looking at are stars or even a reflection of ourselves. But I don't really know exactly how to answer that. The way I interact with people, the way I find myself is by looking at the way people respond to me. When I am myself feeling great, I see that in others. When they're feeling great, then I feel it sort of shift myself. So we're shining back at each other. Um, and then also, we all break down to this vibrancy, this force of life that's within us, which I perceive as light. So,
And your journey to Journey
sure.
Illuminated.
Okay. So that's been a path of my own healing. Um, it's a literal geographical meandering path, as well as a movement through various stages of healing. And it feels to me um, like an illumination when, there's the light bulb when you get a good idea. I feel like when I have some revelation, it's like being illuminated, or the path sort of becomes visible, whether it's by moonlight or sunlight. It becomes available, seen.
So what is your vision for the work? Like, are you inviting community?
Yes, in fact, that's something that I really learned through Kripalu. Um, a lot of my personal trauma has led me to withdraw from people and distrust or mistrust people. So the work at Kripalu showed me how we can be in community and in group in a very safe, beautiful, trusting way, encouraging way. Um, and also, it shifted that, and the expressive arts through Salve helped me sort of see myself in a much more gentle, non-judgmental way. So the work that I would do is I want to help individuals rediscover themselves or to discover themselves in a really gentle, loving, natural way.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about the benefits of forest bathing, or shinrin-yoku in Japanese. It improves the cardiovascular health by lowering blood pressure, pulse rate. It boosts the immune system. It reduces stress hormone cortisol, improves mental health and cognitive performance, treats depression. Again, it's all about noticing. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your interest in your connection to nature and how that helps you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the idea of shinrin-yoku, the practice of it, was developed by Shinto monks in Japan during the 80s when there was a real problem with depression in their country. So the monks recognized that the forests had these very special trees, and there was some medicine there, energetic medicine or otherwise. I'm not entirely sure, but certainly energetically, I can speak to that. Um, so they developed this practice to encourage people to go back outside in a mindful way, and it seemed to really help. So what we learned at Kripalu is includes elements of forest bathing. Um, and shinrin-yoku, in which we go out with intention, sort of quieting the mind and recognizing that we are moving into, or we're moving out of the human realm and into the everything realm. So it feels like you're going across a threshold and into another world, but it's right here on our doorstep. So you sort of take the intentionality and it shifts the perspective as you move forward into the next space.
And now a shout out to our sponsor, the Good Seed Market, 138 Central Avenue, Seekonk, Massachusetts. Started in 1989 by three friends with a goal of creating a neighborhood market offering simple, natural, organic products for a healthy lifestyle. Now a member of the Independent Natural Foods Retailer Association, our friends at the Good Seed are offering our listeners a 10% discount on their first purchase just by mentioning Hush Providence. The Good Seed Market, a place where ideas can grow. So when you're in your training, in your outdoor training that you did at Kripalu, what can you kind of literally walk us through what that was like?
Yeah. So the first part really is getting into your body, um, which for people who have experienced trauma, that can be a little scary. So it's very gentle. It's sort of an invitation to sort of stretch and get your arms up, recognize the sky or the sun or the trees, whoever are above you. And then, gently down to the ground, whether you can touch the ground or your feet is really not the point. It's really to just recognize that the earth is below, that we're connected to the earth. And then we gently move up the joints, the major joints from the feet and ankles, knees, hips, um, spine, shoulders, arms, and head, neck, um, and with real ease. And especially at Kripalu, they do it at sunrise. So it's a
Mhm.
beautiful time. You're very calm and quiet. It's all done very quietly. So you don't, you have this beautiful, calm awakening with the sun, with the forest animals. Um, And then from there, when your body's awake and your mind is in your body and you can feel maybe the warmth that has been generated by some of the movement, you can feel your heartbeat or your breath a little better because you've brought your awareness there. Then you move gently into and across the threshold into a forest or whatever landscape you choose. Um,
We could just stop for a second. So whatever landscape you choose, because maybe not everyone has access to a forest or something like that. So can you do this sort of anywhere?
yeah, I mean, you could do it in your backyard. You could do, if you don't have a yard, you could do it in a city park. Um, you know, there or a beach. Um, Anywhere that even just outside on the sidewalk. I find that I'm able to do it as well because even if it isn't my garden, there are gardens, and I can walk along a sidewalk and take in the city, the public streets, and the trees and the air, whether it's fresh or not. It's a and the sun and the clouds.
Again, just activating the senses.
Yeah, yeah, and noticing because so many times we're in a rush to get to a destination that we miss so many of the beautiful details along the way. So even when I have a destination that I have to get to by a certain time, I do try to stop. Um, Lately, I've been posting, recording, and noticing a 1 minute
Mhm.
during my commute. I happen to have a beautiful commute. I'm really lucky. I go along the beach, um, so I can stop and watch the waves, smell the salt air. But anywhere there is something beautiful to notice. And then when you pause, you might even find something awesome, not just beautiful. Um, I know that the word beauty is or the concept of beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But a hummingbird, for example, just paused here before the phone call. And if I had been nose deep in my computer and not aware of the sound of their wings, then I might have missed that opportunity to see something much smaller than I am, who paused to look at the flowers because maybe they were going to get a snack, but they also paused to look at me and observe me, which is pretty special.
Very special. So I'm going to invite you now to share a story that you shared with me when we did the preliminary of September 12th, 2001.
Hmm. Well, you're a really great interviewer in terms of you've prepared so well, and you've surprised me with that date. Um, I don't know where you found it, but the date is meaningful to me for many reasons. My heart's racing right now. September 11th was a really big story for my family, really big event. My dad was doing consulting work and worked on the 99th floor of the first building hit, and he was stuck in an elevator. Um, it's really his story to retell, but in short, after a series of unexpected, unusual um, sequences of events, he missed his train, missed the subway, missed the elevator doors, and he never is late. So all these things sort of delayed him, thankfully, long enough where the elevator that he got into didn't go up. And while he was still close to the bottom floor, um, when the elevator cables were severed, he didn't fall. So he and 7 or 8 other people were stuck in the elevator car for quite a while. And September 11th, I was in British Columbia visiting my mom. And it was the first day that I had arrived. I was living in Key West, working on boats and in an Italian restaurant. And on the 10th, I flew to Victoria, British Columbia to see her for a vacation. So in the morning, I was still asleep, given that Victoria time zone is, I think, 4 hours behind. And we got an emergency call from a family friend in Connecticut telling us to turn the TV on. Mom hurriedly woke me up, and then we stood in front of the TV and watched, wondering, because we couldn't get through now to my dad. Was he at work? So it turns out he was there. And so we waited and waited, and finally we got a phone call from him. It didn't sound like him. He was very shocked. He had a different voice. But he'd made it out. And then, when something, I don't know what it's like for others, but certainly for me, when that happened, I wanted to be close to him immediately. And my sister was living with him too. I wanted to be with them. And so I was thinking, how can I get to New York and what can I do? And my mom and her sister talked and decided that it would be best to keep the plan that they had already arranged before 9/11 to visit my aunt on Secret Island, which is where she and my uncle lived. And Secret Island's pretty neat. It's a very small island in the Gulf, and it had no electricity. They lived off the grid all year round, and there were only 4 people who lived who lived on the island year round. They built their own sailboat from a kit, which I loved because I worked on tall ships, and it was pretty exciting that my uncle had built one just out of the kit. And so so the idea of going out there was always nice, but I really wanted to go do something. I felt this need to activate my body and do something helpful. And there were reports of so many streams of traffic going into the city to offer help that it was actually causing problems. So their decision was definitely right. Um, but I think all of us were in such shock that I don't remember what if I agreed or not, but we ended up going. We got on my uncle's sailboat. It was a misty, kind of foggy day. We got to Secret Island, which is so named because it was a gift from JFK to Marilyn Monroe. Um, and my mom decided to sleep in the house with my aunt and uncle, and I really wanted my own space, and I opted to sleep on the sailboat at the dock. But sleep didn't come, and I was sort of tired of lying in the bunk. Like I said, I really wanted to activate my body and do something. I just so many thoughts going through my head. And I got off the boat onto the dock, and it was still pitch black. And I sat on the end of the dock where I grabbed a paddle out of or an oar out of the rowboat and started to stir the water. And bioluminescence or phosphorescence, which is like really small particles. They're living particles in the water that glow when they're agitated. And to me, to the human eye, it looks like glitter of a turquoise color. So I contemplated the the water as I stirred it, almost as if it was a sea of stars. And um, it was soothing. It was soothing more than I don't remember having any conscious thoughts at that point. Just looking at these swirling, in my opinion, pieces of magic felt calming. And the sun started to come up. The seals started to slap the surface of the water to catch their breakfast. They do that to stun the fish, so it's easier for them to catch. And I first it startled me. I wasn't expecting that sound, and then when I looked, there were these big glassy eyes coming up out of the water, looking around as if, it's as if they knew I was there. Maybe they did. Felt like they looked right at me. And then when they threw their head back to go under, the last thing to go under were their nostrils. And it's amazing the timing that they have for just closing them right before they submerge their whole face. So I watched them for a little while, and I don't know when the idea occurred to me, but I decided to row this little boat around Secret Island. And I worked on boats down in Key West. I had got my 6-pack captain's license. I thought about the weather and the current and the tide, and was this a smart thing for me to do? I calculated my strength and decided that even though I'm not a very good or well-practiced rower, I would do it. And I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I did have a life jacket in the boat. So I got into the rowboat, sorted myself out, and started this little trip around this island. And it felt good to move my arms and make some movement sort of through the water. But I was very close to the island. I stayed close on purpose because I hadn't told anybody I was going anywhere. But I could see these bright orange and purple starfish clinging to the sides of the rocks. The tide had just gone down, so they were still shiny wet, but underneath I could see all those little feet that hold on to the rocks. And I continued rowing around the corner to the open side of this of the sound, and there was an egret standing there, wobbling back and forth, but the beak was steady as could be, watching for breakfast. And I just remember looking at that bird like, oh, bird's getting its breakfast, and thinking, how could they think about breakfast right now? Like, there's so much going on. Like, how can they? And then, and then I looked off to the other side of the boat, to the wide open part of the sound, and wondered if I would see orcas. They're known to swim in that area. I didn't see any, but it wasn't really a time to think about that or to even look, because the current was getting quite strong and I really had to work hard to get to where I wanted to go without getting swept away. So I then had to focus on my body, on my technique, and my safety. And just as I was starting to think maybe this wasn't such a good idea, um, the sun came up from behind the mountains. And I paused. I did pause for a second. I looked at it, and it was like it dawned on me, literally, that life goes on. The seals still went for their breakfast. The egret was still fishing. The starfish, still doing whatever they do, clinging to the rocks and looking for whatever food they need. And I still needed to keep rowing. Otherwise, where would I end up? Life goes on was the message that came from the sun to me on September 12th. So, or I guess it was really September 13th. But I got around the island and I felt like I had received a message from the more than human world that I carry with me every single day.
Beautiful story, beautifully told. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I do have a question. If you were doing an autobiography, what is this chapter called right now in your life?
I think Fate Blooms, or Blooming Fate, something like that. I feel that this conversation about September 11th came at a very interesting time too. Exactly a week before, I went to a very brand new friend's house to stay at his place because he had an extra room and I needed to be in Newport. That night, when we were having our first conversation, really, outside of the workspace, we discovered that his uncle, was in charge of the anti-terrorism unit in the World Trade Center, and made sure that the firefighters who were helping, they all were, but he went to make sure that this particular group of firefighters who were tending the elevators didn't need any extra help, that they were all set, and they were, and they are the ones who let my dad out of the elevator.
Wow.
Yeah. So on Friday, we found that out, and on the following Friday, we spoke about this, this date. You and I did. It felt like fate. Like, I really need to talk about this in the way of healing. That the message that I got from the sun and the seals and the egret and they all contributed to this message of healing that we all need to hear again and again and again.
Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing all of that with us today. I really appreciate it, and I wish you well on your journey. And
thank you.
I will say thank you again to our listeners, and until next time, be well. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Hush Providence, a well-being podcast. This would not be possible without the incredible help from Jamie Farinella and Stephanie Whitehead on branding and logo concept, John Papa's endless generosity, David Davignon and Austin Lynch for their skilled technical expertise, and of course, our amazing guests and all of you, our listeners. Until next time, be well.